We want to extend our deepest and sincerest appreciation for all of our sponsors. You can see the presenting sponsor logos right in front of you. So grateful to have their support. And to be honest, these companies, corporations, individuals, I always like to say they really like us, but they love you. They love the missions that you're serving. They love the causes that you're providing solutions to in our community. So check out our presenting sponsors, give them a like, thumbs up, some follow, and just some overall love because they're doing great things to support your great things. Julia Patrick, I'm so glad to be here with you for another episode of the Nonprofit Show. Julia Patrick is the CEO of the American Nonprofit Academy. I get to serve alongside Julia. I'm the co-host, Jarrett Ransom, also known as her nonprofit nerd, or your nonprofit nerd, but really the nonprofit nerd, CEO of the Raven Group. And I'm also excited to share with you today's guest. And as I said, we have a wonderful lineup coming up this week. We've got Tony Bell tomorrow with Fundraising Academy. We have someone incoming, Sandra Madison is her name, to talk about project feasibility. And then we have PetSmart Charities about how to talk to funders. So I'm looking excited for that. But today I am thrilled to have Frank Basilisey. I practice this, Frank.
Poker face, non-reactive poker face. Yeah, Basilisey. It's okay. I was like 20 before I could say it consistently. So you've got time.
Let alone spelling it. I even wrote it out right here. I'm like, I've got it. Basilisey. So Frank,
that's it.
Basilisey. Thanks for joining us today, Frank. I am so excited to chat with you and to really, as I say, and nerd out over a really fun topic. So welcome and thanks for joining us.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here.
Frank, we talk so much on the Nonprofit Show about 1.8 million nonprofits across this country doing amazing things, 11 million Americans employed by these nonprofits. And when it comes down to it, marketing, I think, is one of the keys of why some organizations resonate more with donors than others, because they're able to tell their stories, they're able to communicate. So we wanted to get you in the hot seat to learn how visual materials and graphics could really help us move our nonprofits forward. And it's something that we don't spend enough time, money, or talk about. I think we feel like a lot of times, we have a great product and we have a great mission, so that should be enough, but it's not, is it?
Well, it's the critical first step, of course, is having a clear mission and then vision and the values to help make it happen. Absolutely. But what's always the case is people that are involved in nonprofit organizations are passionate, committed people who will do what it takes to get the job done. So that means if this person needs a website and that person needs a website and that person needs an email communication campaign, they just go off and do it. And what happens is we don't have consistency of messaging. We don't have consistency of logo treatment, of color, of any of these things, because these people are wanting to get stuff done to further their part of the broader mission. And I see it happen all the time. And I applaud it because it's wonderful to have such passionate people, but it would be more effective and more efficient if everybody was playing from the same rule book, if you will. And that rule book is key, I think. And that's where I see many nonprofits have an opportunity for improvement, to just put together like a really brief one-page overview of mission, vision, values, color, logo, all of these things, and just put it out there for their people to use and for their valued vendor partners to use.
I love it. Okay, so pro tip number one, you use the word cloud. What does that mean?
Well, this is an amazing time to be alive. It's an amazing time to be in business. I mean, think about it. We have like instantaneous, free, worldwide communications that we can do from our desktop. I mean, this is like unheard of. But one of the things that we also have is the cloud at our disposal. And most of us are working on, many of us, I would say, are working on a Microsoft platform. And there's OneDrive, which comes basically free with your Microsoft account. Dropbox also has free offers where you can just basically use a hard drive that's not on your desktop, it's in the cloud, and you could move files into that cloud as if it's a local hard drive, and then you could share that link with your internal folks and your external folks so that everybody is working from the same source materials. And that's what I was alluding to earlier about consistency of messaging, consistency of creative treatment. And I think if there's one takeaway that people get from our time spent here today, it's to build a marketing section in a cloud somewhere and share it with alacrity with your people. It isn't a secret. It isn't something you have to worry about people stealing. It's people will help you do a better job communicating your message.
So Frank, it's interesting that your first pro tip is cloud. Julie and I, and in fact, our executive producer, Kevin, we were talking recently about, you know, the tools in our world that have really enabled us to do so much more, and how the light bulb really was one of those key instruments to say, okay, now we can extend how we, you know, look at productivity throughout the day, that it's not just based off of the sun, right? And so the cloud, I was saying, now we have our tools, if you will, accessible all the time. And so this marketing one sheet is a tool that we don't need to be in the office to pull up on a hard drive or even like a 3-ring binder anymore. It is accessible everywhere.
And it
Absolutely, absolutely. And it isn't just, I would suggest this one-page overview document should be one of the primary inclusions in your directory on the cloud, but you should also have like the one true version of your logo, horizontal, maybe one more vertical, but the one version, save it as a PNG on a transparent background, and then anybody could use it anywhere, and it's the same everywhere. What we need, you know, repetition builds reputation. I say that all the time. And then another that I say is consistency builds confidence. So you're a professional organization and people expect to see the same treatment from you, the same logo from you. And when they see different versions and different typefaces and different colors, it doesn't create confidence. And then if people are not confident, they're not going to necessarily be willing to participate with your organization, either financially or as a volunteer or something, because you haven't created that sense of goodwill, that sense of permanence that people want to be a part of.
So maybe we've jumped ahead, because your point, pro tip number 2 is theme. And is that what you're talking about?
Actually, the theme that I mentioned here is something different than that. And it's, all right, let's call it what it is. It's a crutch. For me, it makes our communications easier for us and for the people that are doing the communication. And what I like to do is I like to come up with a theme, either for a campaign or an annual theme for the organization that they could use internally and externally to keep this year new and different and fresh from last year, and then we get people excited about next year. And some of these themes are like, you know, set the pace. So what does that mean? Shape your world. One year I did shape your world with ASU, and we had we used that theme for the entire year. And at the event, we gave each attendee silly putty. And it was amazing to see a room of 500 C-level business execs playing with silly putty. And it was amazing how it got it. For the set the pace, we had drummers, and we had drums at the different places. We had drummers in the intermissions and stuff. So this annual theme could be very, very helpful because it gives us sort of a copy flow, you know, right away. It's like, okay, if it's going to be you are the key, it's like, oh, okay, I can see where that goes visually. I can see where that goes from a copy standpoint. I can see some specialty advertising items, key fobs, keychains, you know, USB drives on key, all those kind of things. So I think an annual theme or a campaign theme helps to give us a framework for our playground. Otherwise, we go off and crazy. We go all different directions, but
and
the
smattering
framework-
of everything. I was going to ask, so this theme, Frank, is your pro tip really for, I heard you say two things, the year as well as a, like a campaign. Would it be too much if we themed every quarter? Is that too confusing and we're going to lose clarity?
The world is turning faster and faster all of the time. So if people get bored with a theme over a whole entire year, then maybe we do consider doing it quarterly, and maybe it has different dimensions of the same overarching thematic concept, so if it is something like, teamwork makes the dream work or something like that, you could do sports teams, you could do musical, like a musical group kind of theme, you could
right?
do an ensemble, you could maybe leverage that theme differently through the year, but maybe quarterly is kind of the newer way to go. I remember we used to do annual plans a long time ago, and it's like, well, we can't react fast enough if it's an annual plan, but it's up to the organization, of course. But the external and the internal dimension is what I think can be very, very cool here, because it gives consistency for your team. If you have quarterly team meetings or annual shareholder meetings or board meetings or all of that, this theme ties the entire year together. And the announcement of the theme for the next year is a kind of an exciting thing that people look forward to.
Right. People are anxious to hear, ooh, I wonder what next year is going to be, or the next, campaign theme. That's interesting.
Right.
So now pro tip number 3, copy.
Well,
I know, big topic.
Books are written about that. I mean, you could get a degree in just this alone, So what I wanted to do is just impart 2 pointers that I have with regard to copy, okay? Just because it's such an enormous thing, but I wanted to make this actionable and meaningful for people that are watching. So the first point that I'd like to make for copy is the flow of how we introduce it. And I'm a big fan of this rubric, and it is, tell me what you're going to tell me, and then remind me what you just told me. If you think about your high school composition class, it's exactly the same thing. The introductory paragraph, the 3 supporting paragraphs, the closing paragraph, it's the same thing, but we got away from it. And people like to feel comfortable. Like, I know what's coming. Okay, here's the map. I'm on the map. Here's 1, 2, 3. We're at the end of the map. Here's the summation, and we're going to review what we all just discussed together.
So tell me what you're going to tell me. Tell me, and then tell me what you just told me. Is that right?
Exactly right. Exactly right. And I just keep that in the back of my head. So tell me, remind me what you just told me. Let's tie it all together.
And then tell me again. Right.
Right, exactly. And that also brings me to the next point.
Okay.
And this is, again, kind of a little mini one, but it is when you're going to be writing copy, especially direct marketing copy, either appeal letters or that kind of thing, that rule of 3 also comes into play again. And I think it is vitally important to do the call to action 3 times, 3 different ways, somewhere in the body copy, in the closing paragraph of the long copy deck, and the most important place to do the repeat of the call to action is in a PS. And nowadays, I'm seeing lots of letters that I'm getting from nonprofit organizations. They don't have a PS. I'm like, that is the most important thing. Some people only read the PS because they know this is the entire crux of this.
Well, and statistics show, from what I remember, Frank, and feel free to correct me, is that most people actually read the PS first. And as you said, if they even read the entire letter, but they will read the PS first. Right. And so missing a PS is really missing so many opportunity.
Absolutely. And so people, it's the same way people read magazines, skim and read, there's that old kind of rule of thumb, but the PS, and then they'll look through and just see the headline. So that's another point, just from maybe a cross or a bridge from copy to our next point, which is design. And that is, people should be able to read a Johnson box at the top, the headlines pulled out, centered, bold, and get the story. It's like, here's what we're going to cover. 1, 2, 3. Here's the call to action. PS, out the door. Then if they're interested in what you said from a headline standpoint, maybe they'll invest the time to actually read the copy. And hopefully we as marketers make the copy compelling enough that people want to read it and stay engaged to the end. But again, people have very short attention spans these days. Oh, something shiny. No.
Girl, now I have a question. Are we talking print? Are we talking digital? Are we talking all the multi-channels?
I think anytime we could make these communications consistent across platforms, we serve ourselves because we multiply the effect of our messaging. So
Sure.
It's kind of wonky to see a PS in a tweet. Right? It's not going to happen. It's kind of wonky to expect to even see it
characters, right?
in a Facebook post or a LinkedIn post, but when we're doing longer copy, certainly letters, maybe even emails, it should be visually compelling, but there should be that rule of three, and there should definitely be a clear, easily executable call to action. And it's almost easier in electronic communications because what's easier than just hitting a button? I mean, come on.
I know.
So
And
now,
that's the thing.
a part of this now, you take these concepts and you have to make it look good. You have to understand design. For me, that goes back to what you said, is you have to understand what your primary elements are so that you are using the guide star of your colors, your fonts, your logo, all of that. But in the same point, you want it to be a little unique. And if you throw in this concept of theming for a year, talk to us about that.
Well, again, I said it's kind of a crutch, but it's a really good one. Maybe crutch is bad because it has a negative connotation, but it's a tool. It gives us a path that we could follow. Again, depending upon what that theme is, many times the design elements will shake out directly from the theme, be the light. I mean, for goodness sake, it's obvious, the different visuals that you do. And again, we don't want to be hackneyed or trite. We should be creative with our themes, but for the purposes of our discussion, I think it's, again, the theme lends itself to the design. I think it's important to use design thinking as well when we're approaching the creative development of the campaign. And one of the important things is, how is the person that I'm hoping to inspire to take action wanting to see and receive this message? So who is our intended audience, and how do they like to receive information, and how can we make it as easy as possible for them to act on this information? The other piece of this is really designing with the end in mind. So if it's going to be a direct marketing package and you're going out in, say, a 6x9 envelope, to be a little different with some teaser copy, knowing what those specs are key. And also actually getting folding dummies. And I know it's kind of silly because we think, oh, of course we know how to use envelopes, but here's a little pointer. A number 9 response envelope does not conveniently fit into a 6x9 outgoing envelope. It's a little too tight. So if you had a folding dummy along the way, oh, this is gonna not really work. You need a different response envelope for that. But mailing requirements, certainly the capabilities, if you have a trusted printer that you've worked with for a long, long time, knowing what their press capabilities are and what works best for them is great. And of course, being really good friends with your local printer is good, because sometimes they have unspoken for press space. They'll lay out 3 8.5 by 11s and, oh, look, there's nothing happening down here. Maybe we could run a little something for you for not a lot of money.
So I want to go back. We have a viewer that asked a question in regard to the theme, and I'm noticing the theme really plays a big piece in the design element, as you just shared with us, Frank. So the question asks, how do you feel about us crowdsourcing our staff to come up with the theme? So how much does the staff play a part in I don't want to say designing the theme, because design and theme were two different things, but really in creating, what is the theme of the campaign or the year?
Well, that is a great question. And I like the way you asked it too, Jarrett, because what you really have pointed out is how all of these things really just kind of flow together and support each other. And that's really what you want. And my opinion is, the broader the field of view you have, the better the solutions are going to be that you get. So the more cohorts you can involve in the development of your theme, and the more buy-in you can get on your theme development, the better you're going to be at executing your theme, because it's going to resonate with more people. I mean, this is what we want, is to inspire participation by more people. So if you get staff involved, either internal staff, payroll staff, people that are like, nobody shows up in an office every day, I know, but back in the olden days when people all were in the same place at the same time, it was sort of a,
like 18 months ago, right?
Like 8 months ago, right? But crowdsourcing it, doing it online, doing it with stakeholders, doing it with key donors, doing it with members of your board and members of your advisory committees and members of your trade association groups, and even discussion groups of nonprofit organizations. We all help each other. We're all good co-competition. We're all competitive and we're all cooperative. And so
I love that.
we all help each other. It's what we do, But I think it's a great question. So the answer is yes, get as many people to participate in your theme development as possible. Then when you get to near the end or the beginning, you tell everybody's ideas are important and they're certainly all valuable and they will be considered, but they won't necessarily be acted upon. So when when we get to the end of the journey there, we need to have somebody make a decision, say, here's what it's going to be, and then that's what we do. And then maybe you have 3 or 4 built in for next year to consider, which is great.
That's great advice. I love that. Because I was thinking too, our question came to us by way of, do we crowdsource our staff? And I also was thinking further, Frank, and other stakeholders, that gives us a really great point of view of what is it that they're looking for and how might we address, maybe the theme that comes from that. So your pro tip number 5, we can see on the screen here, is proof. What is proof?
Well, this one again is something that's so often overlooked because we're all in such a hurry. We just take shortcuts, and so proofing, there's a couple of different steps here. One of them I think that's really important, and this is kind of follows along with the crowdsourcing, is to get another opinion. So you get near the end of the road, you've developed this thing that you think is an amazing package, if you will, and you have worked on it diligently and for months, and maybe even 1 or 2 people on your team have helped. Then you get time to turn the printing press on and make it happen. Before you get to that point, run the entire package by a trusted individual or individuals. We all have advocates that we know and love that we can turn to and trust, and ask them, will you please take 5 minutes, look through this thing, and then when we get to the end of it, I want to ask you a couple of questions. How did this make you feel? Did this inspire you to take the desired action? You'll be amazed at, it can be a tiny little tweak. It could be like, I didn't like this word here, or this made me feel a little unclear. It always gets better. And this goes again back, the more diverse input that we get in the development of our ideas, the better our ideas become. And so getting lots of feedback, I think, is really, really key. The other piece of this is you yourself should actually go through the steps of the call to action. So if it's fill out a response device, if it's fill out this form online, whatever it is, physically do it. And if it's going to be ink on paper, you do it at something that's printed out at 100% size. There is nothing more frustrating than trying to get your email address in a line that's that big. It just hurts. And It doesn't make any of us look overly genius, right? So don't do it. The other piece of it, though, is if, say, it's an online response mechanism, how is the back end working? Is the automatically generated email going out? Does it look like you expect it to go? Is the data capture mechanism feeding the correct databases at the end so that you could take follow-up actions and have these people feel the connection with your organization over the longer term? Can spam, opt-in, definitely key. So make sure that we're meeting with all the requirements for that. But the actual doingness of the call to action is key, because so many times we get to the end of the process, we've worked really, really hard to generate these leads, and then nothing happens with them. It's like, well, what happened here? I was really looking forward to hearing more from your organization, and I haven't heard another thing from you. That doesn't feel very good.
It's interesting. I just did an audit for a nonprofit on this very thing. And we took a credit card donation, a cash donation, a social media donation, and then something that was from a printed call to action. We did them all with 4 different addresses, did them all on the same day, and then waited to see what happened. And when we went back to the organization to say, look, this is what the experience was, it was shocking to them, because all the things that they had put into place, it wasn't really working.
Ah,
And it was devastating to them, because they were like, oh my gosh, all the things that we've done that we thought were going to be moving us forward, we've missed a big chunk. And so I think there are a lot of things that now, they're reevaluating and moving forward to make corrections. But to your point, I love that you said, print everything out and actually work it and see how something can be done. I always have the Judy Patrick rule. My mom, who's fabulous, I always say, if my mom, who's 80 years old and incredibly bright, can get through this from her demographic, from her age, then we're golden.
right, exactly.
So often we do these things and then we never test them. So yeah, okay. Now this has been amazing, because you're speaking my love language, as they say. I have to ask you this last pro tip. I've been thinking about this so much, wondering what in the heck you were going to say. What is the bonus?
All right, this one is key, because I have seen this happen 1,000 times. And in fact, I have a file folder in my cabinet that I keep, that I populate sometimes too frequently. But the bonus here is, when you're writing copy, or when you're like deep in the throes of writing copy and you're having flow and it's going really great and you're just missing a detail, and it's like, get this dollar amount from Bob, and then you keep on writing, and then you're writing and writing, you're doing really, really great, and you get to the end and you hit the send button, or you hit the collect for output button, you send it to the printer, and then you get 500,000 copies of this letter, and it says in the middle of it, get this detail from Bob. It's not so good. So rather than interrupt your flow, or rather than stop writing, and I'm so glad that you put this background in magenta, because this is my bonus tip number 6. Anytime you have unknown copy points, put them in magenta, this bright pink color. And as you're reading through, as you're proofing, even as your printer gets it and they're going to put it on press, they're going to be like, hey, what's this magenta stuff going on in here? This doesn't really make sense. It's like, oh, I forgot to get that detail from Bob. And you drop it in, you change it to black, and off you go. Works for emails, it works for online content, it works for web content, it works for ink on paper content. It's a savior. And it's so it's like big magenta, you can't miss it. You don't want to make it like disturb the layout, but you want it to be enough different that you're not going to proceed to the next step without filling in that detail.
Well, and I think that goes back to, Frank, I love that. And, I love it for multiple reasons, but there have been so many times that, many of us have been working on a project. And as you said, we see it every day. We see it so often that it becomes, like the back of our hand. We know it. We're like, oh yeah, no big deal. But if we have this big, bold, I don't know why I'm wearing this big magenta jacket today.
See, there you go.
Bonus is that it's like, oh yeah, I need to check with Bob, because that is what this magenta color is telling me.
And don't like just set it in something that you think, oh, this is so obvious. Like, all right, I don't know what this phone number is, but I'm going to make it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and we'll pick it up when we get to the end. Well, guess what? That looks like a phone number, and you get to the end and it doesn't look any different, and off you go. And that's not a very good phone number. You're not going to get a lot of calls for that one.
No. Wow, Frank, this has been amazing, and our time is up. It's gone by so fast. So fast. I love the things that you've brought to us in our nonprofit sector. Shoot, we need this information so much. And here is Frank's information. Really cool things that you've shared with us today. Again, I'm Julia Patrick. I've been joined today by the nonprofit nerd herself, Jarrett Ransom. We want to remind everyone, we're really excited. We have the Fundraising Academy coming back tomorrow for another lecture, or series, I should say, in our cause marketing. I have been so transfixed and transformed by this series. So I really invite you to join us, because it's great information. Again, we want to thank our presenting sponsors. Without you, we would not be here. with the likes of somebody like Frank, who's just like opened up the world to me. And now I want to get back into my office and start cranking out some product, because it's really great advice.
On the cloud though, right?
On the cloud. And if you have enjoyed this as much as we have, go ahead, and if you feel like you need to go back, you can always access our archive through Roku, through Amazon Fire TV, Vimeo, through our site. I mean, we went through a lot of things, but those 6 tips are great. And so make sure you check those out. Again, wow, a great week, Jarrett. A great day to start off our week, don't you think?
Amazing, Frank. I know I'm going to go back and watch it, and I'm going to pause. And you said so many things that I'm like, wait, I wish I had written that down, right? But thank you so much for being a guest. We have other amazing guests joining us this week. As you learn, Tony Bell with Fundraising Academy. PetSmart Charities is coming on this week as well, and you don't want to miss what they're talking about.
Awesome. And as we like to end every show, we want to remind everyone to stay well so you can do well. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Thanks, Frank.
Thank you, Frank.
Thank you, guys.